Hey peeps, what's up? Munchie here, back with another video, and in this beginner woodworking tutorial, I am going to show you how you can create a guide for your circular saw so that you can make rip cuts easily. This here is the final product, and this is very easy even for the beginner woodworker out there. The beauty of this jig over here is that this is a straight edge, this here is a straight edge. Then if you move over to this side, this here is a straight edge, and this here is also a straight edge. So without any further delay, let us get down to business. The things you need: one, protection equipment for your eyes, ears. You are handling a circular saw, so make sure you are super safe. Glue, any brand, wood glue, obviously a combination square, preferably 12 inches or above, but 6 inches might not cut it in this case. Some wood screws, tape measure, clamps, and a drill or a screwdriver to screw in these screws. And of course, the most important thing for a woodworker, you do need a pencil as well. Next thing we need is something which has a straight edge from the factory, and in my case I'm using this piece of MDF, which is 0.75 inches or 3/4 of an inch. What about the length, the width, and the depth of the piece of MDF or plywood? We'll talk more about that up next after we get some measurements from our circular saw. The first measurement of the circular saw which we need to know is the width of your base or the shoe. So in my case, you can see it is less than 7 inches. So for the width of your piece, I would say go for somewhere around 16 or 17 inches, which is almost like a wee bit more than twice the width of the shoe of your circular saw. Now, as for the length of the base piece which we are going to use, that depends on how long of a piece you want to create as a guide for rip cuts for your circular saw. It can be as long as you want it to be and as short as you want it to be. Me personally, I would go for something like, say, 3 feet or 4 feet. The third thing, or the third most important measurement here, is the maximum depth to which your circular saw can cut. In my case, this one over here, I can do 2.5 inches, but depending on the thickness of the material over here, I might be limiting the maximum depth of wood or plywood which I can cut with my circular saw. So 2.5 is the maximum depth I can cut with the circular saw, but once I have the shoe or the blade over here riding against this edge, then I am going to reduce 0.75. So 2.5 minus 0.75 makes it 1.75 in my case. So that is the maximum which I can cut with my circular saw. And of course, super important thing, while I was touching the blade over here, the circular saw here was not connected to the power outlet. So make sure when you're doing these measurements, your circular saw is disconnected from the power outlet. The second most important measurement which you need to know is the clearance between the shoe over here or the base of your circular saw and the top of the motor housing when it is set at maximum depth. Why? Because the fence which we are going to use for this rip cut jig for my circular saw needs to fit in here perfectly at maximum depth if you want to cut at your maximum depth after factoring in the height of this material. Of course, if you're using, say, 1/2 inch of plywood, then you can always reduce the height over here and have this piece sit up a bit higher. But again, take a piece of paper, do all these calculations, and there is one more calculation which you need to know about, or one more measurement, and that measurement, my dear friends, is the height of this base plate or the shoe. As you can see, it is around 1/2 inch for me, so that is what I need to use. So this fencing over here needs to be 1/2 inch or more depending on the clearance. It cannot be less, because if it is less than the height of my shoe over here, then the shoe or the base plate can go over that and not ride smoothly along this edge over here. So those are all the calculations which you need to keep in mind. That being said, for our easiest rip cut jig for your circular saw or a guide for your circular saw, this is the next piece. This is a piece of molding I got from the molding section at my home improvement store, which could be Lowe's, it could be Ace Hardware, it could be Home Depot, it could be Menards, and this one here is 0.5 inches by 0.75 inches, which means it can fit in here easily. And by here I mean the space between the motor housing and the base of the shoe of the circular saw when it is set at maximum cutting depth. And this is going to be our edge. And the best part about this is a straight edge from the factory as well. So now we have two straight edges. One is this piece of molding, and then the second one is our MDF or plywood, which also has a straight edge from the factory. The next thing we need to do is we need to measure the distance from the end of the shoe of your circular saw. This is the part where this little piece of wood is going to be. So this edge is going to ride along this piece of wood, but we need to know the distance from here to 0 or where the blade starts. And in my case, you can see it is between 5 and 6. So this here is 0, and if I measure it with my measuring tape over here, you will notice it is between 5 and 6. In fact, it is somewhere around 5.15 or 5.25. So the next thing which we are going to do is we are going to use this factory straight edge on this piece of MDF to draw a straight line at 5.5 inches using a combination square. How did we come up with the number 5.5 inches? Well, it is a wee bit more than the distance between the end of my shoe and the beginning of my plate, which was somewhere around, say, 5.25 inches. So we are going with 5.5 inches. You can always go with 6 inches if you want, or 7, because eventually we are going to cut off a little bit of that piece from this edge, whatever is extra. So let us assume the distance from the base of your shoe and the beginning of the blade is, say, 5.25. You draw your line at 5.5. Then when you cut off, you're going to cut off 0.25 of an inch. Similarly, if you do it at 6 inches, in that case you're going to cut off 0.75 of an inch. You are drawing a straight line using your combination square. It might take you some practice, you might make some mistakes, but that's all right, you will get the hang of it. The next thing you need to do is you need to take your edge guide and then line it up along this line which you drew, and use some wood glue, screw it in using some wood screws. Make sure you pre-drill your holes, and if you get any squeeze out from extra wood glue, make sure you wipe it off right away with a wet cloth so that you do not have to scrape off dried off wood later on. So here it is. This piece has now dried. We have screwed it in. We did countersink the screws as well. And now all you need to do is first ride your circular saw along this edge so that you take a little bit of the piece from here. You should get a perfectly straight edge, and then do the same thing on this side, because remember, if this side is a straight edge, then this side is also a straight edge, because that is how this piece of molding came from the factory. All four sides were a straight edge. And here it is, peeps. This here is the final result. This here is our circular saw rip cut guide. And the best part about this one is you have a straight edge on either side. So this is a straight edge, this here is a straight edge, this side is a straight edge, and this side is also a straight edge.